September 18, 1968, Los Angeles International Airport. A customs officer looked at the young Austrian's passport and asked a routine question. Purpose of visit? Arnold Schwarzenegger, 21 years old, said in broken English, "I come to be biggest movie star in world." The officer smiled politely. Another dreamer. Los Angeles got thousands of them every year. Most ended up washing dishes or going home broke within 6 months. What that customs officer didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Arnold had a secret. Not the $20 in his pocket, not his bodybuilding titles, not even his impossible confidence. The real secret was something Arnold had figured out 3 months earlier in a basement gym in Austria. Something so counterintuitive that when he finally used it 7 years later, it would change Hollywood forever. Arnold stepped into the California sunlight and immediately realized his first problem. He had absolutely no idea what to do next. Joe Weider, the bodybuilding promoter who had invited him, wasn't answering his phone. Arnold stood at a payphone for 20 minutes, feeding it coins, listening to it ring into emptiness. His $20 was rapidly becoming $15, then $12, then $8. An airport security guard finally approached him. "You can't stay here all day, buddy." Arnold tried to explain, but his English dissolved under pressure. Words he'd practiced on the plane vanished from his mind. The guard looked at this massive young man with increasing suspicion. Foreign, confused, loitering. The guard's hand moved toward his radio. That's when Arnold did something strange. He pulled out a magazine from his bag. Not a bodybuilding magazine, surprisingly, but a business magazine. He pointed at an article about real estate investment and said to the guard, "I study for business. You no good library." The guard's suspicion faded. A foreign student. That made sense. He gave Arnold directions to the nearest library, never knowing he just had a conversation with a future governor of California. Arnold walked 6 miles to that library. Not because he needed to study, he'd already memorized that article, but because libraries were free, air-conditioned, and had phone books. He found Joe Weider's office address, figured out the bus system through trial and error, and made his way to Venice Beach. When he finally arrived at Gold Gym, the sun was setting. He'd been in America for 8 hours and had spent almost all his money on payphones and bus fare. He had $3.65 left. Arnold walked into Gold's Gym and saw something that made him smile for the first time all day. The biggest bodybuilders in America were training there, and they had no idea what was about to happen to them. Gold's Gym welcomed Arnold, but Hollywood? Hollywood had an invisible wall around it that nobody had warned Arnold about. It wasn't the obvious rejections that hurt. Arnold expected agents to say his accent was too thick or his name was unpronounceable. He'd prepared for that. What Arnold hadn't prepared for was a rejection that came without words. Casting directors would see Arnold Schwarzenegger on the schedule and suddenly have urgent meetings. Receptionists would promise to pass along his headshots, then drop them in the trash the moment he left. Agents would take meetings with him out of curiosity. Let's see the bodybuilder who thinks he can act, and spend the entire time barely concealing their amusement. One casting director didn't even pretend. She looked at Arnold's headshot, looked at Arnold, and said, "Honey, I'm going to save you years of disappointment. You have 3 problems that can't be fixed. Your accent makes you unemployable. Your body is too big for any role, except maybe circus strongman. And your face, I'm being honest here, is too distinctive. Leading men are supposed to be handsome in a forgettable way. You're memorable in the wrong way." She thought she was being kind. She thought she was giving him the truth so he could move on with his life. Arnold thanked her politely and left. But walking to his car, something clicked in his mind. Something about what she'd said triggered a memory of that moment in Austria, that realization in the basement gym 3 months before coming to America. That night, Arnold wrote something in his journal. Just 1 sentence, in German. Years later, when a biographer asked him to translate it, Arnold smiled and said, "It's better you don't know. It would sound too arrogant in English." But the sentence roughly translated to, "They're rejecting the wrong version of me." Here's what nobody understood about Arnold in those early years. He wasn't failing. He was building. While other aspiring actors were waiting tables and going auditions, Arnold was doing something completely different. He was making money. Lots of it. He taught bodybuilding classes, yes, but that was just visible income. The real money came from construction jobs where his size made him valuable mail-order fitness booklets that he wrote and distributed himself. And this is where it gets interesting: real estate. Arnold had arrived in America with $20, but he'd also arrived with something more valuable: a mind that understood leverage. He noticed that bodybuilders made barely enough to survive, but the gym owners who hosted bodybuilding competitions made real money. He noticed that actors struggled for years, but the agents who represented them collected checks whether their clients worked or not. He noticed that everyone wanted to live in California, which meant real estate would always appreciate. So Arnold started buying apartment buildings. Not big ones. He couldn't afford those. Small ones that needed work. He'd buy them with minimal down payments, do the renovation work himself after training, and either rent them out or flip them. By his mid-20s, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the guy Hollywood said would never make it, was a millionaire. But here's the twist. Arnold kept his wealth secret. He still lived in a modest apartment. He still drove an old car. When he went to auditions, he dressed like a struggling actor, because Arnold had realized something crucial. Hollywood loves a success story, but only after you're successful. If they knew he was already wealthy, they'd never take his acting ambitions seriously. So Arnold played the role of the struggling bodybuilder trying to break into Hollywood, while secretly being richer than most of the agents rejecting him. This double life created something unexpected: freedom. Arnold could wait. He could turn down roles that weren't right. He could be patient for the perfect opportunity. While other actors were desperate for any work, Arnold was strategic. And then, in 1977, that opportunity arrived in the strangest way possible. A filmmaker named George Butler approached Arnold with a proposal, a documentary about bodybuilding called Pumping Iron. Arnold almost said no. A documentary? He wanted to be a movie star, not a documentary subject. Documentaries were for has-beens looking back on their careers, not actors trying to launch them. But then Arnold read the script and saw something Butler didn't even realize he'd written. The documentary had Arnold playing a character, himself, but exaggerated, confident to the point of arrogance, funny, charismatic, strategic, mind games with competitors, one-liners delivered with perfect timing. Arnold realized this wasn't a documentary. This was an audition tape. So Arnold did something brilliant. He treated Pumping Iron like an acting job. He didn't just show up and be himself. He performed a heightened version of himself. Every interview was rehearsed. Every supposedly spontaneous moment was calculated. Even his famous psychological warfare with Lou Ferrigno, making Lou doubt himself before the competition, was partially staged for dramatic effect. The documentary crew thought they were capturing reality. Arnold was creating cinema. When Pumping Iron was released, something unexpected happened. Mainstream audiences who had never cared about bodybuilding found themselves fascinated by Arnold. Not his muscles. They found him interesting. The accent that agent said was career-ending became endearing. The confidence that seemed arrogant in person came across as charming on screen. The body that was too much for Hollywood suddenly seemed like an untapped opportunity. Producers started calling, not for leading roles, but for something: character parts, villain roles, anything that required a unique physical presence. And then Arnold got a call about a sword and sorcery film shooting in Spain. The lead character spoke in short, simple sentences, perfect for someone with an accent. The character was a barbarian from ancient times, perfect for someone with an unusual look. The character was impossibly muscular, perfect for a bodybuilder. The movie was called Conan the Barbarian, and Arnold knew this was his moment, but he almost ruined it before filming even started. Arnold arrived in Spain for Conan, filming supremely confident. He'd already played the barbarian role in his mind hundreds of times. He knew exactly how to do this. The first day of shooting, director John Milius called action. Arnold delivered his first line. Milius called cut. He walked over to Arnold and said quietly, "Arnold, what are you doing?" "Acting," Arnold said, confused. "No, you're doing something else. You're doing what you think acting looks like. Stop it." Arnold was devastated. He'd taken acting classes for years. He'd studied films. He'd prepared obsessively. And the director was telling him he was doing it wrong? That night, Arnold sat alone in his hotel room in Spain, facing a crisis. He'd spent years trying to become an actor, and now that he had his chance, he was failing. Then Arnold remembered something. That realization in Austria. That sentence in his journal. They're rejecting the wrong version of me. Arnold had been trying to act like other actors. He'd been trying to minimize his accent, to move like conventional leading men, to fit into Hollywood's expectations. But what if that was exactly wrong? What if the secret wasn't to act like everyone else, but to act like nobody else could? The next day, Arnold approached Milius and said, "Can I try something different?" Milius, skeptical but willing, said, "Show me." Arnold delivered the line again, but this time, he didn't try to hide his accent. He didn't try to move gracefully. He moved like a predator. He spoke with his natural cadence. He was fully, unapologetically Arnold. Milius stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. "That's it. That's Conan. Do that." From that moment forward, Arnold stopped trying to be an actor and became something else. A presence. Every scene, every line, every movement was distinctly Arnold. The accent wasn't a flaw. It was exotic, otherworldly, perfect for a character from a mythical past. The unusual physicality wasn't wrong. It was exactly what a legendary warrior would move like. When Conan the Barbarian was released in 1982, critics were divided, but audiences loved it. The film grossed over $130 million worldwide. More importantly, Hollywood noticed something. Arnold Schwarzenegger had star quality, not despite his uniqueness, but because of it. That should have been the end of the story. Arnold had broken through. He was a movie star. But Arnold wasn't satisfied with being a movie star. He wanted to be an icon, and that required one more transformation. A young director named James Cameron was making a low-budget science fiction film called The Terminator. The script called for a killer robot from the future, disguised as a human, hunting a woman in present-day Los Angeles. Cameron met with Arnold to discuss the role of Kyle Reese, the human protector. Arnold read the script and said, "I should play the Terminator." Cameron was confused. "Arnold, the Terminator is the villain, the bad guy. Why would you want that role? You're a leading man now." Arnold smiled. "Tell me something. What do people remember from movies? The hero who saved the day? Or the villain who scared them?" Cameron thought about it. Darth Vader. Hannibal Lecter. The Wicked Witch. The shark from Jaws. Arnold was right. People remembered villains. But there's a problem, Cameron said. The Terminator has very few lines. It's mostly physical presence and intimidation. That's not really acting. Arnold's smile grew wider. Exactly. And that's when Cameron understood. Arnold wasn't trying to prove he could act in the traditional sense anymore. Arnold had realized that his greatest strength was being Arnold. Completely unique, impossible to copy, unforgettable. The Terminator required almost no dialogue. It required presence, intimidation, a physicality that seemed both human and not human. It required someone who could be memorable while barely speaking. It required Arnold Schwarzenegger being exactly himself. The famous line, "I'll be back," was originally written as "I will be back." Arnold wanted to change it because "I will be back" felt more mechanical, more machine-like. Cameron insisted on the contraction. They argued about it. Finally, Arnold delivered a line, "I'll be back," in his thick Austrian accent, with zero emotion, looking directly at the camera. Cameron watched the playback and immediately knew that line, in that accent, with that delivery, was going to become iconic. He was right. When The Terminator was released in 1984, it became more than a hit movie. It became a cultural phenomenon. "I'll be back" entered the language. The Terminator became one of the most recognizable characters in cinema history. And Arnold Schwarzenegger became something Hollywood had never seen before. An action star was completely unique, completely himself, and completely unstoppable. 7 years after arriving with $20, Arnold hadn't just broken into Hollywood. He'd changed what was possible in Hollywood. He'd proven that you didn't need to fit the mold. Sometimes, the secret to success is being so different that Hollywood has to invent a new mold just for you.